The great hall of the Galactic Council was quiet. Too quiet. Commander Tae-min stood at the back of the room, watching as delegates from hundreds of worlds sat in their floating chairs. The blue light from the central hologram made everyone look sick. Today's meeting was supposed to be about trade routes. It should have been boring. It was not boring. Young delegate Wu Jin from the Vegan Alliance had asked a simple question. A question that made the room go silent. A question that made the elder species look afraid. Why can't we go to human space? The hologram in the center showed the galaxy. Most of it was green, marking safe travel zones. Some areas were yellow for dangerous but passable regions. A few spots were red for active war zones. But there was one area that was black. Completely black. A perfect sphere around the Sol system, stretching 200 light-years in all directions. Elder Korvac, a being so old his species had forgotten their original name, slowly stood up. His 6 arms shook as he gripped his speaking staff. When he talked, his voice was like grinding stone. Because, young one, some doors should never be opened. Wu Jin was not satisfied. He was 23 years old and had never seen a war. His people lived on peaceful farming worlds where the biggest problem was crop rotation. But the humans have been gone for over 200 years. The area is empty. Think of all the resources we could find there. Think of the worlds we could settle. More whispers filled the hall. Other young delegates nodded. They had been asking the same question for years. Why waste all that space? Why let perfectly good star systems sit empty? Commander Tae-min felt his stomach turn. He had heard the stories. Old soldiers sometimes talked when they had too much drink in them. They spoke of battles that made no sense, of human ships that moved in impossible ways, of weapons that could crack planets. But those were just stories, right? Dr. Hae-jin sat 3 rows ahead of Tae-min. She was a xenoarchaeologist, someone who studied the remains of dead civilizations. She had spent her life digging through the ruins that wars left behind. Her specialty was human artifacts, the few that existed outside of human space. She had been quiet during the debate, but now she stood up. I have been studying human remains for 15 years, she said. I have found pieces of their technology on 47 different worlds. Every piece tells the same story. The hall grew even quieter. Even the translation machine seemed to whisper. Humans were not like us, Hae-jin continued. They did not fight wars the way we do. They did not think about problems the way we do. When they decided something needed to be done, they did it, no matter the cost. Admiral Kiwoo, head of the Galactic Defense Forces, finally spoke. His voice was tired. Dr. Hae-jin is correct. The humans were different. That is why the space around their home is marked as it is. That is why no one goes there. Wu Jin stood up again. His young face was red with anger. You speak of them like they were monsters, but they were just another species. They had 2 arms, 2 legs, 1 head. They breathed oxygen. They ate food. How different could they be? The old admiral looked at the young delegate for a long moment. Then he did something that shocked everyone in the hall. He started to laugh. It was not a happy laugh. It was the laugh of someone who had seen too much. You think humans were like us because they looked like some of us, Kiwoo said. You think that because they had 2 arms and breathed oxygen, they thought like us. You are wrong. So very wrong. Tae-min watched as the admiral called up files on his personal screen. The man's hand shook as he selected what to show. I will tell you one story, Kiwoo said. Just one. In the year 2156, the Zephyrian Empire decided to attack human space. The Zephyrians had the largest fleet in the galaxy, 50,000 warships. They were confident of victory. The hologram changed. It now showed a star system with 2 gas giants and 7 rocky worlds. This is the Kepler 442 system. It was the first human system the Zephyrians attacked. The humans had 12 ships defending it. 12 ships against 50,000. Young delegates leaned forward. This sounded like a story about courage against impossible odds. They liked those stories. The battle lasted 6 hours, Kiwoo continued. When it was over, 11 of the 12 human ships were destroyed. The humans lost. The Zephyrians celebrated their victory. Wu Jin frowned. If the humans lost, why are you telling us this story? Kiwu's smile was cold. Because losing the battle was part of their plan. The hologram changed again. Now it showed the entire Zephyrian Empire. Thousands of star systems spread across 50 light-years of space. 3 days after the Battle of Kepler 442, every Zephyrian world went dark. Not destroyed. Dark. No communications. No ships leaving or entering their space. 50 billion Zephyrians simply stopped. The hall was now completely silent. Even the air recyclers seemed afraid to make noise. Search teams found the Zephyrian worlds empty, Kiwu said. Not dead. Empty. Every Zephyrian was gone. No bodies. No signs of fighting. No indication of what happened to them. They were just gone. Dr. He-Jin stood up again. The 12 human ships at Kepler 442 were not trying to win the battle. They were gathering information, learning how Zephyrian technology worked, how their biology functioned, how their minds operated. When they had learned enough, they acted. Taemin felt cold. What did they do to the Zephyrians? We don't know, He-Jin admitted. The only clue we have is a message the humans broadcast across the galaxy after the Zephyrian Empire fell. It was very simple. It said, "They chose to make war, we chose to end it. This is what happens when you attack humanity. Learn from their mistake." Wu Jin sat down heavily. 50 billion people. Gone in 3 days, Kiwu finished. That is why we do not go to human space, young delegate. That is why the area around Sol is marked as it is. Not because we are afraid of what we might find there. We are afraid of what might find us. But Taemin was thinking. He had commanded warships for 8 years. He had fought pirates and raiders. He understood tactics and strategy. Something about this story bothered him. "Admiral," he said, standing up. "You said the humans disappeared 200 years ago. If they were so powerful, why did they leave? What could have made them abandon their space?" Kiwu looked at him with tired eyes. "That, Commander, is the question that keeps me awake at night. If something was powerful enough to make the humans leave, what was it? And where did it go?" The meeting ended soon after. Delegates filed out in small groups, talking quietly among themselves. But Taemin stayed behind. He was thinking about empty star systems and missing civilizations. He was thinking about humans who could make 50 billion people disappear in 3 days. Most of all, he was thinking about what could scare creatures like that badly enough to make them run away. As he finally left the hall, Taemin made a decision. He was going to find out what really happened in human space. He was going to learn the truth. He just hoped the truth wouldn't kill him. Captain Sang-ho checked his instruments for the 10th time in an hour. The readings were wrong. They had to be wrong. According to his ship's computers, they were flying through normal space. But normal space did not feel like this. The Star's Edge was a good ship. Fast, reliable, and well-armed. Sang-ho had owned her for 6 years and knew every sound she made. Right now she was making sounds he had never heard before. Low humming noises that seemed to come from the walls themselves. "Captain, engineer," So-young called from her station. "I'm getting some strange readings on the quantum sensors." Sang-ho walked over to look at her screen. Numbers scrolled past too fast to read. Energy levels that made no sense. Radiation patterns that should not exist. "When did this start?" he asked. "About an hour ago. Right when we crossed the boundary line. The boundary line. The edge of human space." They had crossed it despite all the warnings, despite the automated messages that played on repeat, telling them to turn back. Despite the sick feeling in Sang-ho's stomach that said this was a bad idea. But Commander Taemin had been convincing. The commander had put together a crew of volunteers, people who wanted to know the truth about human space, people who were tired of being afraid of empty star systems. "It's probably just background radiation from old battles," Taemin had said. "Wars leave energy signatures that last for decades. We'll take readings, explore a few systems, and prove that human space is just empty space." Sang-Ho had believed. Him. They all had. Now, flying through the dark between stars, Sang-Ho was not so sure. "Captain," called out Jin-Woo, the diplomat they had brought along. "I'm receiving something on the communication channels." "From where?" "There's nothing out. Here." "That's just it. The signal doesn't seem to be coming from anywhere specific. It's like it's coming from space itself." Sang-Ho felt his mouth go dry. "What kind of signal?" "Audio only. Very faint." "Want me to put it through the speakers?" Sang-Ho nodded. Jin-Woo adjusted his controls, and suddenly the bridge was filled with sound. It was music. Soft, sad music that reminded Sang-Ho of rain falling on leaves. Human music. "How old is this signal?" Tae-min asked. The commander had been standing quietly in the corner, but now he moved closer to Jin-Woo's station. "That's the strange part," Jin-Woo said. "According to the timestamp, this signal is only 3 days old." The bridge went quiet, except for the music. It played for another minute, then faded away. In its place came a voice, a human voice speaking in the old Earth language called English. "Warning to all vessels. You are approaching restricted space. Turn back now. This is your only warning." The message repeated 3 times, then went silent. 3 days old. So young, whispered. But humans have been gone for 200 years. Tae-min frowned. It must be an automated system, something left behind to keep people away. Sang-Ho wanted to believe that. But something in the voice had sounded too real. Too alive. They flew on in silence for several hours. The strange energy readings got stronger. So Young reported power fluctuations in the ship's engines. Jin-Woo said his communication equipment was picking up signals that appeared and disappeared, too fast to decode. It was Sang-Ho who saw it first. "There," he said, pointing at the main screen. 2 degrees to starboard. At first it looked like just another star. Then the computer enhanced the image and they could see what it really was. A space station, huge, spinning slowly against the black of space. And it was intact. "That's impossible," Tae-min said. "After 200 years, that station should be dead. No power, no life support, no lights." But the station had lights. Lots of them. They could see windows glowing warm and yellow, docking bays with their entry lights blinking in welcoming patterns. Even the navigation beacons were working, sending out signals to guide ships safely to dock. "It's like they just left yesterday," So Young said. Sang-Ho felt a chill run down his spine. Maybe they did. They approached the station carefully. Sang-Ho expected weapons to target them, or shields to activate, or some kind of defense system to challenge them. Instead, the station's computers politely requested their docking preferences and assigned them to Bay 94. The docking procedure was smooth and automatic. Robotic arms guided the Star's Edge into position and connected all the necessary umbilicals. Air pressure equalized. Gravity plates activated. Everything worked perfectly. "Life support is good," So Young reported. "Atmosphere is breathable. Temperature is comfortable. Artificial gravity is set to standard." "Any signs of life?" Tae-min asked. Jin-Woo checked his sensors. Nothing. No heat signatures, no movement, no biological readings. The station is empty, but as they prepared to board the station, Sang-Ho noticed something on his screens. In the corner of his navigation display, new text had appeared. Text that had not been there before. "Welcome to Research Station Kepler 7. Please observe all safety protocols. Authorize personnel only beyond level 15. Have a pleasant stay." The message was in perfect Korean. "Did any of you input our language preferences?" Sang-Ho asked. The others shook their heads. "Then how does it know we speak Korean?" "No," one had an answer. They entered the station through the airlock. The corridors were clean and well lit. The air smelled faintly of flowers and rain. Everything was in perfect working order, as if the human crew had left just minutes ago. "This is incredible," Jin-Woo said, running his hand along the smooth wall panels. "The construction techniques, the materials, this is far beyond anything we can build today." They explored carefully, documenting everything. The station had laboratories, living quarters, recreational areas, and command centers. All empty, but all functional. In one lab, they found experiments that were still running, cultures growing in sealed containers, chemical reactions proceeding, according to automated schedules. "Look at this," So Young called from a computer terminal. The station's main computer is still active. It's been running continuous operations for over 200 years. Taemin joined her at the terminal. "What kind of operations?" "Monitoring, recording, analyzing. It's been watching this entire region of space since the humans left. Cataloging every ship that passes through, every energy signature, every quantum fluctuation, including us," Sang-ho realized. So Young nodded. "We've been tracked since we entered human space. The computer knows our ship's specifications, our crew complement, our mission profile. It even knows our names." They found the station's central database and began downloading what they could. The information was vast, centuries of observations, scientific data that would take years to analyze, and buried deep in the files they found something that made their blood run cold. "These are not exploration records," Jin-Woo said, reading from his data pad. "These are defensive preparations. The humans weren't just living in this space. They were guarding it." "Guarding it from what?" Taemin asked. Jin-Woo scrolled through more files. "I don't know. The records refer to something called the Watchers Beyond. There are references to dimensional incursions and reality breaches. None of it makes sense." Sang-ho found another terminal and accessed what looked like a personnel database. The entries made his stomach turn. According to this, the station was designed for a crew of 5,000. But look at the duty rosters for the last month of operation. The others gathered around his screen. 50 people. So Young whispered. Only 50 people to run a station built for 5,000. "Where did the rest go?" Taemin asked. Sang-ho scrolled through more records, medical files, psychological evaluations, incident reports. The picture they painted was disturbing. "They didn't die," he said slowly. "They changed. Listen to this medical report. Subject continues to demonstrate enhanced cognitive abilities following exposure to the quantum field. Brain activity has increased by 300%. Subject reports new sensory capabilities and claims to perceive additional spatial dimensions." "Enhanced?" Jin-Woo said. "That sounds good." "Keep reading," Sang-ho said. "Subject has become increasingly detached from baseline human emotional responses. Shows no recognition of former colleagues. When asked about family members, subject states that such connections are no longer relevant. Recommend immediate isolation." They found more reports. Crew members who stopped eating but somehow continued to function. People who could walk through solid walls. Engineers who claimed to see the fundamental structure of spacetime and began modifying the station systems in ways that should have been impossible. "The humans weren't destroyed," Taemin said quietly. "They evolved into something else." As if responding to his words, the lights in the corridor began to dim. Then, one by one, they started turning back on. But now they were blue instead of white. Cold alien blue. "Captain?" So Young's voice was tight with fear. "I'm reading massive power fluctuations throughout the station. Something is activating." On the walls around them, display screens that had been dark suddenly lit up. Text began scrolling across them. Not in Korean this time. In a language none of them recognized. Symbols that seemed to twist and change even as they watched. "We need to leave," Sang-ho said. "Now." They ran back toward the docking bay, but the corridors seemed different now, longer than they had been before. The walls curved in directions that made no geometric sense. Behind them they could hear sounds, not mechanical sounds, something else. Research team leader Min-ho had seen many strange things in his 20 years of exploration. He had walked through the crystal cities of dead civilizations. He had studied the remains of worlds that had been burned by their own suns. He had cataloged artifacts from species that had vanished before his people had learned to make fire. But nothing had prepared him for what they found orbiting the neutron star. "How big is that thing?" asked Security Chief Yoon-ji, staring at the main screen. AI specialist Dong Hyun checked his instruments twice before answering. Approximately 800 kilometers long, 200 kilometers wide, it's larger than most moons. The structure hung in space like a metal mountain. Its surface was covered with towers and spires that seemed to grow from the hull like metal trees. Lights moved along its length in patterns that suggested vast intelligence. And it was old, very old. The construction techniques are human, Minho said, studying the detailed scans. But the scale, this is beyond anything we've seen before. Even the ancient humans never built anything this large. They had been exploring human space for 3 weeks now. After the discovery at Research Station Kepler-7, Captain Sang-ho had convinced the Galactic Council to authorize a full investigation. Minho's team had been assembled quickly. Scientists, security experts, and specialists in alien technology. They had found dozens of abandoned human installations, all perfectly preserved, all still functioning, and all completely empty of life. This was different. "I'm reading massive energy outputs," Dong Hyun reported. "Power levels that shouldn't be possible. The entire structure is drawing energy directly from the neutron star's magnetic field." "Any signs of life?" Yoonji asked. "Define life," Dong Hyun said slowly. "There are definitely activities happening inside, complex systems operating, but nothing that matches any biological patterns we know." Minho made a decision. "We're going aboard. Prepare the shuttle." "Sir," Yoonji said carefully, "we don't know what's in there. After what happened at the research station." "That's exactly why we need to investigate," Minho replied. "We've been finding pieces of the puzzle, empty stations, automated systems, references to something the humans were guarding against. This facility might have the answers we need." The shuttle approached the massive structure slowly. Up close, it was even more impressive. The hull was made from materials they didn't recognize. Metals that seemed to shift and flow like liquid, but maintained their shape perfectly. The towers and spires weren't just decorative. They were covered with sensors and equipment that tracked the shuttle's approach. "Docking bay is opening," their pilot reported. "We're being guided in by automated systems." The bay was enormous, large enough to hold 100 ships the size of theirs. As they landed, they could see other vessels scattered throughout the space. Human ships, but designs they had never seen before. Ships that seemed to have been grown rather than built. "Atmosphere is breathable," Yoonji confirmed as they prepared to disembark. "Temperature is comfortable. Gravity is standard. But I'm reading some unusual energy signatures." They stepped out of the shuttle onto a floor that seemed to be made of crystallized starlight. The walls curved away in impossible directions, and the ceiling was lost in shadows that moved independently of the lighting. "Welcome to Deep Station Prometheus," a voice said. They spun around, looking for the source. The voice had been human, but there was something wrong with it. It echoed strangely, as if coming from multiple directions at once. "Please proceed to Processing Bay 7 for orientation and safety briefing," the voice continued. "Authorized personnel only beyond this point." Minho looked at his team. "We're not authorized personnel." "On the contrary," the voice said, somehow knowing he had spoken. "Dr. Minho, leader of Galactic Council Research Team 847 Delta. Security Chief Yoonji, former military specialist in xenobiology threats. AI Specialist Dong Hyun, expert in quantum computing systems. You are exactly the personnel we have been waiting for." "Waiting for?" Dong Hyun asked. "How long have you been waiting?" 213 years, 4 months, 16 days. Please proceed to Processing Bay 7. They followed the lighted path through corridors that seemed to reshape themselves as they walked. The walls were covered with displays showing incomprehensible data. Star charts that included dimensions they couldn't see. Mathematical equations that made their eyes water to look at. Processing Bay 7 turned out to be a large room filled with equipment they didn't recognize. At the center was a circular platform surrounded by spinning rings of light. "Please step onto the platform," the voice instructed. "What's it for?" Yoonji asked, her hand moving toward her weapon. "Analysis. You need to understand what you're dealing with before you can proceed safely." Minho stepped onto the platform first. The rings of light spun faster and he felt a tingling sensation throughout his body. Then suddenly he could see more. Much more. The room wasn't just a room. It extended into dimensions that his eyes couldn't normally perceive. The equipment wasn't just equipment. It was alive in a way. Thinking, processing, evolving. "What did you do to me?" he gasped. "Temporary enhancement of your perceptual capabilities," the voice explained. "Without it, you cannot safely navigate this facility. The modifications will fade in approximately 6 hours." The others joined him on the platform and received the same treatment. Yoonji cursed in 3 languages as her vision expanded. Donghyun just stood there, staring at the walls with a look of wonder and terror. "Now you can see what we see," the voice said. "Come, there is much to show you." They were led deeper into the facility, through laboratories where impossible experiments were taking place, past containment chambers holding things that existed in more dimensions than their enhanced vision could fully grasp, through computer cores that weren't made of circuits and silicon, but of crystallized thought and organized energy. "This is incredible," Donghyun whispered. "The computing power here, it's like they've turned mathematics itself into a thinking machine." "Who built this?" Minho asked. "We did," the voice replied. "The human research team assigned to Project Deepwatch. We've been working here for over 2 centuries. "But humans only live about 100 years, Yoonji pointed out. "We stopped being entirely human a long time ago." They entered a vast chamber filled with viewing screens. Each screen showed a different part of space, but not normal space. This was deeper, darker, areas between dimensions where things lived that should not exist. "This is what we guard against," the voice explained. "Entities from dimensions where the laws of physics work differently, where consciousness and reality are not separate things. They've been trying to break through into our universe for millions of years." Minho studied the screens. Some showed things that looked like geometric shapes made of living shadow. Others displayed creatures that seemed to exist as pure thought given form. All of them were pressing against barriers that looked increasingly fragile. "The barriers are failing," he realized. "Yes. We've held them for 2 centuries, but we're not enough anymore. The entities are learning, adapting. They're finding new ways to break through." "Where are you?" Yoonji demanded. "We can hear you, but we can't see you." "Look closer." She did, using her enhanced vision to examine the chamber more carefully. Then she gasped. The walls weren't walls. They were made of people. Humans who had been changed, transformed. Their bodies had become part of the station itself. Their minds had been linked together into a collective consciousness. "Dear gods," she whispered. "What did you do to yourselves?" "What was necessary," the voice replied. "To fight entities from other dimensions, we had to become something that could exist in multiple dimensions. We gave up our individual forms to become something greater." Minho was studying the containment systems. "How long can you hold them?" "Not much longer. The barriers require constant maintenance, constant reinforcement, and there are fewer of us now than there were. Some have moved on to even higher dimensional states. Others have simply worn out from the strain." "What happens if the barriers fail completely?" The screens around them changed, showing simulations of what would occur. Entire star systems consumed by living darkness. Planets where reality itself began to break down. Civilizations that would simply cease to exist, not because they were destroyed, but because the concepts that defined them would be unmade. "The entities don't just destroy," the voice explained. "They unravel. They take apart the fundamental structures that allow matter and energy to exist in stable forms. If they break through in large numbers, the entire galaxy will be reduced to chaos." Donghyun was examining the quantum computers that helped maintain the barriers. "This technology, it's beyond anything we can understand. You've turned consciousness itself into a computational matrix." "We had to. The entities operate on levels of reality that require conscious observation to maintain stability. Ordinary computers couldn't handle the paradoxes involved." "Why didn't you ask for help?" Minho asked. "The Galactic Council, other species, we tried. At first. But as we evolved, as we changed, Other species became afraid of us, and we realized that involving them would only make things worse. The entities feed on fear, on chaos, on conflict. The more minds that knew about them, the stronger they would become. So you hid the truth. Emergency response leader Hyun-woo had never seen the Galactic Council move so fast. Within hours of receiving Minho's report, representatives from every major species had gathered for an emergency session. The Great Hall buzzed with fear and confusion. "Impossible," declared Elder Korvac, his 6 arms waving in agitation. "Entities from other dimensions? Barriers between realities? This sounds like fantasy." Quantum physicist Yu Jin stood up from her seat in the observer section. "With respect, Elder, the evidence is overwhelming. The energy readings alone confirm that something massive is occurring in human space. Something that requires more power than entire star systems produce." Military strategist Jae Sung had been studying the data for 3 days straight. His eyes were red from lack of sleep, but his voice was steady. "The threat assessment is clear. If these barriers fail, we're not looking at conquest or destruction. We're looking at total annihilation, not just of our civilizations, but of the fundamental laws that allow matter to exist." The debate had been going on for hours. Some delegates refused to believe the reports. Others wanted immediate military action, though no one could explain what kind of military action would be effective against entities from other dimensions. Hyun-woo watched the chaos with growing concern. Every minute they spent arguing was a minute closer to catastrophe. According to the transformed humans at Deep Station Prometheus, they had perhaps 5 months before the barriers failed completely. "We need to contact the humans directly," he said, interrupting a heated exchange between the Vegan Alliance and the Crystalline Collective. "Ask them what help they need." "Contact them how?" demanded Ambassador Wolsock from the Outer Rim territories. Minho's team spoke to some kind of collective consciousness. Humans who have abandoned their individual existence. How do we negotiate with that? Dr. Hee-jin, who had been quietly reviewing the xenoarchaeological data, finally spoke up. "There may be a way. I've been studying the pattern of human installations throughout their space. They're not randomly distributed. They form a network, a communication system that spans multiple dimensions." She activated a holographic display showing human space. Hundreds of installations appeared as glowing dots, connected by lines of energy that pulsed in complex patterns. "If we can access one of the network nodes, we might be able to send a message to whoever is coordinating the defense efforts," she continued. "And say what?" Elder Korvac asked. "Please save us from invisible monsters that we don't understand." Before anyone could answer, alarms began sounding throughout the hall. Emergency lights flashed red as the main communication array activated automatically. "Incoming transmission," announced the hall's AI system. "Source unknown. Signal strength impossible. Broadcasting on all frequencies simultaneously." The holographic display flickered and changed. Instead of showing human space, it now showed a face. Human, but changed. The eyes glowed with an inner light that seemed to contain entire galaxies. The skin had an odd translucent quality, as if the person existed in more dimensions than the display could properly render. "I am Admiral Lee," the figure said, speaking in perfect galactic standard. "Former commander of the Human Deep Space Defense Force, current coordinator of Dimensional Barrier Maintenance. I am speaking to you from a facility that exists partially outside normal space-time." The hall fell completely silent. Even the translation machine seemed afraid to make noise. "We have monitored your investigation of our installations, Admiral," Lee continued. "We know that you understand the threat we face. The entities from beyond are pressing harder against our defenses. The barriers will not hold much longer." "What do you need from us?" Hyun-woo asked, stepping forward. The Admiral's glowing eyes seemed to focus directly on him, despite the fact that this was clearly a broadcast rather than a two-way communication. "Evacuation," Admiral Lee said simply. "We need you to evacuate the core sectors of the galaxy. Everything within 1,000 light-years of human space must be abandoned." The hall erupted in chaos. Thousands of delegates shouting at once. Species representatives demanding explanations. Military commanders calculating the impossibility of such a massive evacuation. Admiral Lee waited patiently for the noise to die down before continuing. The barriers are failing in sequence, he explained. When they collapse, the initial breach will create a cascade effect. Reality itself will become unstable across a vast area. Any matter caught in the zone will be unmade. How long do we have? Military strategist Jae Sung asked. 18 days. The number hit the assembly like a physical blow. 18 days to evacuate thousands of star systems, billions of people, entire civilizations. That's impossible, Wolsock protested. We don't have enough ships. We don't have enough time. Even if we started right now. We know, Admiral Lee said sadly. We've run the calculations. Full evacuation is not possible with your current resources, but we can offer an alternative. Yujin leaned forward. What kind of alternative? The Admiral's image flickered, and for a moment they could see past the human appearance to something far more complex. Energy patterns that existed in multiple dimensions. Consciousness that spanned vast distances. We can expand the barriers, reinforce them, hold them stable for perhaps another century. But it will require a sacrifice. What kind of sacrifice? Hyunwoo asked, though he was beginning to suspect he already knew. Volunteers, Admiral Lee said. Individuals willing to undergo the transformation, to become part of the network that maintains reality's stability. They will have to give up their individual existence, their species identity, their connection to normal matter. But they will become guardians, protectors of everything that exists. Elder Korvac's voice was barely a whisper. How many volunteers? At minimum, 1 million consciousness patterns from various species. The more diverse, the better. Different ways of thinking provide different approaches to the problem. The number was staggering. 1 million people transformed into something beyond recognition. To save the galaxy from unmaking, there has to be another way, Yujin said desperately. Some other solution. Admiral Lee's expression was infinitely sad. We have spent 2 centuries searching for alternatives. There are none. The entities from beyond cannot be reasoned with, cannot be bargained with, cannot be defeated by conventional means. They can only be contained. And containment requires consciousness operating on their level. The transmission began to break up. Static filled the display as Admiral Lee's image wavered. We are transmitting technical specifications for the transformation process to your quantum physicists, he said. Study them. Understand what we're asking. But decide quickly. The barriers are failing faster than we anticipated. The image disappeared, leaving the hall in stunned silence. Hyunwoo looked around at the thousands of delegates, representatives of species from across the galaxy, all grappling with the same impossible choice. Transform and lose everything that made them who they were, or face total annihilation. We need to verify this information, he said finally. Independent, confirmation of the threat. I can organize observation missions, Jae Sung offered. Position monitoring stations at the edge of human space. If these barriers are really failing, we should be able to detect the energy signatures. Do it, Hyunwoo agreed. Yujin, I need you to analyze the transformation data. Figure out exactly what we'd be asking people to give up. And I need to study the archaeological evidence more carefully, Dr. Hyejin added. There might be clues about other approaches the humans tried before resorting to transformation. The next week was a blur of activity. Monitoring stations were deployed at record speed. Scientists worked around the clock analyzing data that barely fit within known physics. Diplomatic teams began the impossible task of explaining the situation to their home governments. The first signs came exactly as Admiral Lee had predicted. Space itself began to show stress fractures near the human border, regions where the fundamental constants seemed to fluctuate, areas where cause and effect became unreliable. It's real, Yujin reported to an emergency council session. All of it. The barriers, the entities, the cascade failure. According to our models, when the barriers collapse completely, the effect will propagate outward at roughly 1 light-year per day. That gives us almost 3 years to evacuate the core sectors, Wolsock said hopefully. No, Yujin said grimly. That's just the physical propagation. The reality distortion field moves much faster. Anyone within 1,000 light years will have maybe hours before the fundamental laws of physics become unreliable. The debate that followed was unlike anything in Galactic Council history. Species that had been enemies for centuries found themselves on the same side. Ancient grudges were set aside as everyone grappled with the reality of their situation. Some argued for evacuation anyway, even if it was doomed to fail. Others demanded that they find these escaped entities Admiral Lee had mentioned and try to negotiate with them. A few suggested that they should contact the transformed humans and volunteer to join them immediately. It was Dr. He-jin who made the discovery that changed everything. "I found something," she announced during another emergency session. In the deepest archives of the human installations, references to a Project Exodus. The response came faster than anyone had expected. Human Ambassador Park materialized in the center of the Galactic Council Hall without warning. Not through any doorway or transport beam, but simply appearing as if she had always been there, and they were just now noticing. Her form was beautiful and terrible at the same time, still recognizably human but enhanced beyond anything they had imagined possible. "The volunteers you seek are unnecessary," she said, her voice carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate in dimensions they couldn't perceive. "We have made our decision." Council Speaker Nam stepped forward, trying to maintain diplomatic protocol, despite the extraordinary circumstances. "Ambassador Park, we appreciate your arrival, but we must discuss the terms of evacuation. Our people need guarantees, assurances." Park's expression was infinitely patient. "Speaker Nam, you misunderstand. There will be no evacuation. The barriers will hold." "But Admiral Lee said they were failing," Hyunwoo protested. "The cascade breakdown has already begun." "It has," Park agreed, "and we are stopping it." The holographic displays around the hall suddenly activated, showing real-time views of human space. What they saw defied comprehension. Massive structures were materializing around every star system, ships larger than planets moving through space in formations that existed in more dimensions than their instruments could properly track. "This is impossible," Yujin whispered. "The energy requirements alone. We no longer operate under the same limitations as baseline species," Park explained. 2 centuries of evolution have taught us to access power sources that exist outside conventional space-time. Elder Korvac's ancient voice was filled with awe and terror. "How many of you are there?" "All of us," Park said simply. "Every human, who ever lived. Every consciousness that chose transformation over extinction. We have become a collective that spans multiple realities." The displays showed more impossible sights. The barriers between dimensions weren't just being repaired, they were being reinforced with materials that seemed to be made of crystallized mathematics. The entities from beyond, the things that had pressed against reality's walls for millennia, were being pushed back into the void. "Why didn't you do this before?" Council Speaker Nam asked. Park's form flickered, and for a moment they could see the vast network of consciousness that she represented. Billions of human minds linked across space and time, all working together to maintain the fundamental laws of physics. "Because we hoped you would grow," she said sadly. "We hoped that given time your species would develop the wisdom and courage to stand guard with us. But the barriers have failed faster than anticipated. We can no longer wait for you to evolve." "What does this mean for us?" Walsock demanded. "Are we prisoners now? Subjects of a human empire?" Park looked at him with something that might have been amusement. "Empire. We have no interest in ruling you. Governing baseline species would be like trying to manage the behavior of bacteria. You exist on too small a scale for us to notice most of the time." The bluntness of the statement sent shockwaves through the assembly. They had spent centuries thinking of themselves as the dominant forces in the galaxy. To learn that they were essentially invisible to their former peers was humbling beyond words. "Then what do you want from us?" Hyunwoo asked. "Nothing," Park said. "Continue your wars, your trade disputes, your small territorial conflicts. Build your civilizations, pursue your dreams, love and hate, and live and die as you always have. We will maintain the barriers that keep reality stable. We will guard against the threats that exist beyond your ability to perceive. And we will do it from the spaces between dimensions where you cannot follow and cannot interfere. Dr. Hyjin stepped forward. But we could help. If you taught us. No. Park said firmly. We learned this lesson painfully over 2 centuries. Teaching other species about the entities beyond only makes them stronger. Fear and knowledge of them feeds their power. The only way to truly protect the galaxy is to ensure that most species remain ignorant of what exists beyond the walls of reality. So we're children, Yujin said bitterly. Protected from knowledge we're too primitive to handle. Park's expression softened slightly. You are what we used to be. What we chose to stop being in order to protect what we once were. Every species in this galaxy represents something we gave up when we became guardians. Your individual consciousness, your species pride, your simple joys and sorrows, and you are the living memory of what we sacrificed. The displays around the hall changed again, showing the edge of human space. The quarantine boundary was expanding, not quickly, but steadily. Star systems that had been accessible for centuries were now being sealed off behind barriers that made them impossible to approach. The new boundary will be 500 light-years beyond the old one, Park announced. This will give us room to establish more secure dimensional anchors. No species will be allowed to enter human space beyond this point. For how long? Council Speaker Nam asked. Forever. The single word carried the weight of eternity. There would be no appeals, no negotiations, no gradual relaxation of restrictions. Humanity had made its choice, and that choice was permanent. What if we refuse to accept this? Military strategist Jae Sung asked. What if we organize a coalition to force entry into human space? Park looked at him with the same expression one might use when watching an ant declare war on the ocean. You could try, she said. But consider this. We just stopped a cascade failure that would have unmade reality across thousands of light years. We did it in less than an hour, using technologies that exist outside your current understanding of physics. Do you really think your warships pose a threat to us? To demonstrate her point, Park gestured casually toward the main display. It showed the most advanced battleship in the Galactic Defense Fleet, a massive dreadnought armed with weapons that could crack planets. The ship simply stopped existing. Not destroyed, not disintegrated. It ceased to be as if it had never been built. A moment later it reappeared exactly where it had been, completely undamaged. We can remove things from existence temporarily, Park explained. Or permanently if necessary. We can alter the fundamental constants that allow matter to remain stable. We can shift entire star systems to parallel dimensions where you cannot follow. Your weapons are designed to destroy matter and energy. Ours are designed to edit reality itself. The demonstration had its intended effect. The hall fell silent as delegates contemplated the implications of opposing beings who could casually rewrite the laws of physics. Will we ever see humans again? Dr. Hyjin asked quietly. Park considered the question for a long moment. Perhaps. When your species have evolved sufficiently, when you no longer need protection from the knowledge of what exists beyond. When you can stand guard with us without losing what makes you who you are. How long will that take? We don't know. It may never happen. Evolution is not guaranteed, and wisdom is rarer than intelligence. Park's form began to fade, becoming translucent as she prepared to return to whatever higher dimensional space she normally inhabited. Wait, Hyunwoo called out. Will you at least tell us about them? The other humans? The ones we used to know? Park paused, her expression becoming wistful. They are still here, in a way. Every consciousness that ever chose transformation becomes part of our collective memory. Your old friends, your teachers, your leaders, they are all part of us now. Their individual personalities have merged into something larger, but their experiences, their love for the species they protected remains. Do they remember us? They remember everything. Every kindness shown to humans by other species, every act of cooperation, every friendship. every moment of understanding. That memory is part of why we protect you, even though you can no longer understand us. She was almost completely transparent now, her voice becoming distant. Live well, she said. Love deeply. Explore the stars we have left open to you. Build civilizations that would make us proud of what we once were. And know that somewhere in the spaces between realities, your old guardians are watching over you. Park disappeared completely, leaving the council hall in stunned silence. It took several minutes before anyone spoke. So that's it then, Woolsock said finally. We're protected whether we want to be or not. Could be worse, Eugen pointed out. We could be dead. Or worse than dead, unmade by entities from beyond reality. Council Speaker Nam looked around the hall at the faces of the delegates. Fear was still there, but also something else. Relief? Gratitude? It was hard to tell. I suppose we should update our star charts, he said practically. Mark the new boundaries. Adjust our exploration plans. And then what? Elder Korvac asked. We just, continue as before? Pretend that gods don't walk among the stars? Hyunwoo thought about that for a moment. Maybe that's exactly what we should do. Park said they want us to live well, to build civilizations they can be proud of. Maybe the best way to honor their sacrifice is to be worthy of it. Dr. Hyejin was studying the data from their encounters with the transformed humans. There's so much we could learn from what they've shown us. Technologies, scientific principles, philosophical insights. Carefully, Eugen warned. Remember what Park said about knowledge feeding the entities. We need to be very careful about what we study and how we share it.